Youngest federal judge, they keep saying. Funny how fast people move up when they check the right boxes. I guess qualifications come second to optics these days.
I earned my seat the same way anyone does. Nothing was handed to me.
Paris's eyes hardened as she stepped closer to Athena. Without breaking eye contact, Paris tilted her glass and let the red wine cascade down Athena's dress.
Keep telling yourself that. And oh, welcome to the big leagues. Consider this your initiation gift.
What Paris didn't know was that the stain on Athena's dress would soon be forgotten, but the consequences of this moment never would. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The Meridian Hotel ballroom glowed like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers threw light across the marble floor. Servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. 200 donors stood in small groups, laughing too loud. Phones already out to catch the night's biggest moment. Judge Athena Walsh stood near the stage in a deep blue gown, her back straight, her chin level. She was used to being watched. She was the youngest federal judge in the district, and people never let her forget it. Some watched her with pride. Others watched her like they were waiting for her to fail. Tonight, the city was giving her an award, Civic Achievement. Her mother, who used to clean houses 2 blocks from this very hotel, would have cried to see this room. Judge Walsh. Felicity Nolan, the event's organizer, touched her arm. We're starting in 5 minutes. You ready? Ready, Athena said, and meant it. Across the room, Mayor Marcel Abraham held court near the bar, champagne in hand, his silver hair catching the chandelier light. Beside him stood his daughter, Paris Abraham, swaying slightly, her wine glass already refilled twice. Paris's eyes locked on Athena. She smiled the way a cat smiles at something small and cornered. "Excuse me, Daddy," she said, and walked over, heels clicking hard against the marble. Judge Walsh. Paris's voice carried, sweet and sharp at the same time. "Big night for you." "It is," Athena said. "Thank you." "Must be nice." Paris tilted her head, studying her like she was something under glass. "Youngest federal judge in the district. That's what they keep saying, right? Youngest." She laughed, short and ugly. Funny how fast people move up these days. Almost like the rules don't apply if you check the right boxes. The room around them didn't stop moving, but a few heads turned. Athena felt the heat rise in her chest. She kept her voice level. "I earned my seat the same way anyone does," she said. "Hard work. Nothing was handed to me." "Sure it wasn't." Paris's smile didn't move. "Must be exhausting, though, being the quota pick who got lucky young. Wonder how many people actually earned what you took." Silence dropped over the small circle around them. Someone's champagne glass paused halfway to their lips. Athena didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm, steady as stone. "I'm not going to do this with you tonight." That was the wrong thing to say. Or the right thing, depending on who was watching. Paris's face twisted. The composure Athena showed her, the refusal to fight back, seemed to make her angrier than any insult could have. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went hard and glassy. "You think you're better than me," Paris said, louder now. Heads turned across the ballroom. "Standing there like royalty. Like you belong up on that stage." Paris. Athena kept her tone even, almost gentle. The tone of someone talking someone down from a ledge. "This isn't the place. You don't get to tell me what's not the place." Paris's hand tightened around her wine glass. "You don't belong here. You never did." And then it happened. Paris raised her glass and poured it, slow and deliberate, over the top of Athena's head. Red wine ran down through her hair, over her forehead, down her cheeks, like something out of a nightmare. It soaked into the collar of her blue gown, spreading dark and wet across her shoulder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Somewhere, a phone camera clicked. Athena stood frozen for one heartbeat. Wine dripped from her jaw onto the marble floor. The room went dead silent, waiting to see what she would do. Then, cutting through that silence, came a laugh. Mayor Marcel Abraham, standing feet away, threw his head back and laughed. A real laugh. Loud. Delighted. Like he'd just watched the funniest thing all year. He didn't step forward. He didn't apologize. He didn't even try to hide it. He just laughed, champagne still in his hand, while his daughter smirked and 200 people stared at the wine running down a federal judge's face. Athena stood perfectly still, wine dripping onto her shoulders, and turned her eyes toward the mayor. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The laugh still hung in the air. Wine dripped from Athena Walsh's chin onto the marble, one slow drop at a time. The whole ballroom seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would break first. Felicity Nolan moved fast. She grabbed a stack of white cloth napkins from the nearest table and pushed through the crowd, her heels clicking double time against the floor. "Judge Walsh, here!" She pressed the napkins into Athena's hands, her own hands shaking slightly. Her eyes flicked toward Mayor Abraham, then back to Athena, like she couldn't believe what she'd just watched. Around them, the crowd split into two kinds of people. Some stepped forward, faces full of shock, murmuring things like, "Oh my God!" and "Did that really just happen?" Others raised their phones higher, angling for a better shot, more interested in capturing the moment than stopping it. Paris Abraham stood with the empty wineglass still in her hand, and for 1 second, something flickered across her face. Not quite regret. More like she was realizing, a beat too late, that this was going to be a problem. But she didn't apologize. She never did. "It's just wine," Paris said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. She tossed her hair back and laughed. A short, brittle sound. "Relax. It'll wash out." Mayor Abraham wiped a tear of laughter from his eye and stepped forward, finally, like he was doing everyone a favor. He put a hand on his daughter's shoulder, still grinning. "Just a little spill," he said, loud enough to carry, his tone dripping with false charm. "Kids these days, right? A little wine never hurt anybody. Lighten up, folks." The words landed like a slap. A little spill. Like she hadn't just been humiliated in front of 200 people. Like his laugh hadn't been the loudest sound in the room. Athena pressed the napkins to her face, wiping wine from her eyes, and said nothing. Her hands were steady. That steadiness was costing her everything she had. Edgar Walsh pushed through the crowd then, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on Abraham like he wanted nothing more than to cross the room and put the mayor through a wall. He reached his wife's side and put a hand on her back. Gentle, protective. "Athena." His voice was low, urgent. "We're leaving. Now." "I'm fine," she said, though the wine soaking through her collar said otherwise. "You're not fine. You don't have to be fine." Edgar glanced at Abraham, still smirking near the bar, still playing it off like a joke. "Say the word, and I will end this man's night. Don't." Athena's voice was quiet, but it stopped him cold. "Not here. Not like this." She straightened her shoulders. Wine still dripped from the ends of her hair, dark red against her skin. But she lifted her chin the way she did in her courtroom, the way she'd been taught to carry herself since she was a little girl, watching her mother get talked down to by people who thought they were better than her. "I need to clean up," she said, to no one and everyone. Her voice carried just far enough. "Excuse me." She turned and walked toward the exit, spine straight, steps unhurried. She would not run. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her rush away in shame. The crowd parted for her, phones still raised, murmurs following her like a current. Some faces held sympathy. Others held something closer to curiosity, like they were watching a car crash they couldn't look away from. Paris called after her, voice sharp and mocking. "Don't forget your award, Judge." A few people laughed. Nervous laughs, uncomfortable laughs, but laughs all the same. Athena didn't turn around. Edgar fell into step beside her, one hand hovering near her back, ready to catch her if she faltered. She didn't falter. Not once, not through the length of that ballroom, not past the tables of donors who'd come to celebrate her and had instead watched her get humiliated by a woman half as accomplished and twice as cruel. Behind them, Mayor Abraham's laugh started up again, sharp and careless, carrying across the marble floor like he'd already forgotten anything happened at all. Athena pushed through the ballroom doors and didn't look back. The coat room was quiet, too quiet after the noise of the ballroom. A single lamp glowed in the corner, casting soft light over racks of coats and a folding table stacked with extra napkins. Athena Walsh stood in front of a small mirror mounted on the wall, staring at her own reflection. Wine had dried in streaks down her neck. Her hair, once smooth and pinned back for the award ceremony, hung in damp, dark clumps. The blue gown she'd chosen so carefully that morning was ruined, a deep red stain spreading across the shoulder like a wound. A hotel staff member appeared with a fresh towel and a bottle of water, her face full of quiet sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Judge Walsh. Can I get you anything else?" "This is enough. Thank you." Athena took the towel and pressed it to her face. Edgar Walsh stood near the door, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of worry that made his jaw tighten with every second she stayed silent. He'd seen her handle plenty in their years together. Angry defendants, threats scrawled on court documents, reporters who twisted her words. But he'd never seen her stand this still, this controlled, right after something like this. "Talk to me," he said. "You're doing that thing where you go quiet, and I can't tell if you're about to cry or about to burn the whole city down." "Neither," Athena said. She wiped wine from her collarbone, folded the towel, and set it down with careful precision. "I'm thinking." "About what?" "About the fact that a room full of donors just watched a grown man laugh while his daughter poured wine on a federal judge." Her voice was even. Too even. And nobody stopped it. Not one person in that room stepped between us. "You want me to call someone? A lawyer? The press?" Edgar pulled out his phone, thumb already hovering over the screen. "Because I know 6 people who would love to make Abraham's night a lot worse." "No." Athena shook her head slowly. "Not yet. Not like that." She reached into the small clutch she'd set on the folding table earlier and pulled out her own phone. Edgar watched her scroll through her contacts, her face unreadable, until she stopped on a name and pressed call. "Who are you calling?" "Someone who owes me a favor," Athena said, and lifted the phone to her ear. It rang twice before a voice answered, gravelly and tired, the voice of someone who'd been asleep or close to it. "Athena? It's late. Everything okay?" "I need you to listen carefully," Athena said. Her voice dropped into the same tone she used on the bench, calm, clear, impossible to argue with. "I'm not calling to vent. I'm calling because I think you need to look at something." She explained it plainly. No anger in her voice, no accusation, just facts laid out one after another like evidence in a case file. Whispers she'd heard over the past few months about a shell entity connected to Mayor Abraham's re-election host committee. Donations that didn't add up if you looked closely enough. A name on a filing that didn't match the people actually writing the checks. "I don't have proof," she admitted, "but I know enough to know someone should be looking. Tonight would be a good night to start looking." There was a pause on the other end. Then, You're sure about this? I'm sure enough to make this call at 11 o'clock at night in a coat room, still covered in wine, Athena said. A short, surprised laugh crackled through the phone. Understood. I'll make a call in the morning. First thing. Thank you. She hung up and stood there for a moment, phone still in her hand, staring at nothing. Edgar watched her, something shifting in his expression, worry giving way to something closer to awe. That's it? One phone call? One phone call, Athena said. She finally let herself exhale, a long, slow breath that seemed to release some of the tension locked in her shoulders. Let the review find what it finds. I'm not going to fight him with a shouting match in a ballroom. I'm going to let the truth do what it does. She handed the towel back to the hotel staff member, waiting quietly by the door, and reached for Edgar's hand. Let's go home, she said. I want this dress off, and this night behind me. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, warm and golden, landing across the counter where Athena Walsh sat, with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched yet. Her hair was still slightly damp from the shower, and the wine stains were gone from her skin, but something about last night still clung to her, heavy and unshaken. Edgar Walsh stood at the stove. Scrambling eggs he wasn't really watching, his eyes flicking back to his wife every few seconds. You gonna drink that coffee or just hold it hostage? He asked. Athena didn't answer right away. Her phone buzzed on the counter beside her, then buzzed again, then again, a steady rhythm of notifications stacking up one after another. She picked it up. The first headline made her stomach drop, then flip. Mayor's daughter pours wine on federal judge at gala. Video goes viral. Below it, a still image from Felicity Nolan's video, frozen at the exact moment the wine left the glass, red arcing through the air toward Athena's face. Edgar, her voice was tight. Come look at this. He crossed the kitchen, spatula still in hand, and leaned over her shoulder. His jaw tightened as he scrolled. Video clips had spread overnight, shared and reshared across every platform. People had zoomed in on Mayor Abraham's laugh, freezing it, captioning it, turning it into the moment everyone was talking about. Comment sections overflowed with outrage. Strangers who'd never met Athena were calling her composed, dignified, a model of grace under pressure. Others tore into Paris Abraham, calling her spoiled, cruel, entitled. But it was the second headline that made Athena set her coffee down. Federal Ethics Board opens emergency review into Abraham campaign donations. That's fast, Edgar said, low. That's really fast. They moved overnight. Athena scrolled further, reading quickly, her eyes narrowing with focus. The article mentioned a shell entity tied to Abraham's host committee, donations that didn't match publicly filed records, an investigation that had apparently been simmering for longer than anyone outside a small circle knew. Her one phone call hadn't started this. It had simply pointed a flashlight at something already rotting underneath. Her phone rang before she could finish reading. Bianca Olsen's name flashed across the screen. You've seen it, Bianca said, before Athena could even say hello. No hello, no small talk, just straight to it. Exactly like Bianca. I've seen it. You're a hero this morning. You know that? Half my group chat is calling you the most graceful woman in America. The other half wants Abraham's head on a stick. Bianca's voice softened slightly. How are you doing? Really? Composed, Athena said. On the outside. That's my girl. You held it together in that ballroom better than I would have. I would have thrown the whole bottle back at her. Bianca paused. But listen, this isn't over. Not for you. Abraham's not the kind of man who takes an emergency ethics review lying down. He's already planning his Senate run. A man like that doesn't just apologize and slink away. He fights dirty. You need to be ready for that. I know, Athena said quietly. Do you? Because right now, The story is about a wine glass and a laugh. But men like Abraham, they don't lose gracefully. They look for someone else to blame. And you made yourself an easy target the second you made that call. Athena glanced at Edgar, who was watching her with a mixture of pride and worry, the eggs on the stove long forgotten and starting to smoke faintly. "Let him try," Athena said. Bianca laughed, short and sharp. "That's the spirit. Just watch your back. I'll call you later." The line went dead. Edgar finally noticed the smell and rushed back to the stove, scraping burnt eggs into the trash with a muttered curse. Athena set her phone face down on the counter and stared out the window at the quiet street outside. Morning traffic rolling past, like nothing in the world had changed. But something had changed. She could feel it, the way a person feels a storm coming before the first drop of rain falls, a pressure in the air, a stillness that wasn't really stillness at all. Her phone buzzed one more time. A new headline, breaking, still loading. Mayor Abraham's spokesperson responds to Judge Walsh's involvement. Her stomach tightened. Athena Walsh's chambers felt smaller than usual that afternoon, the walls pressing in as she read the article on her computer screen for the third time. The headline sat above a photo of Mayor Marcel Abraham looking serious, statesmanlike. Nothing like the man who'd laughed while wine dripped down her face 2 nights ago. Mayor Abraham's spokesperson responds to Judge Walsh's involvement. She scrolled through it slowly, her stomach twisting tighter with every paragraph. The article, written by a reporter known for friendly coverage of the mayor's office, painted a very different picture of what happened at the gala. It claimed sources close to the mayor's family described a personal misunderstanding between Paris Abraham and Judge Walsh, one that had unfortunately escalated due to what the article called Athena's unusually swift and aggressive response. Then came the part that made her blood run cold. The article suggested that Athena may have used her federal position to trigger a retaliatory investigation against a private citizen over what amounted to a personal dispute. It quoted an anonymous source calling her actions deeply concerning for a judge still finding her footing, a phrase clearly designed to remind readers she was young and to plant doubt about whether she belonged on the bench at all. Athena sat back in her chair, jaw tight, reading the words again to make sure she hadn't misunderstood. They were accusing her of judicial misconduct. Her office phone rang. She answered on the first ring, already knowing, somehow, what was coming. "Judge Walsh, this is the Judicial Conduct Office. We wanted to inform you directly before it becomes public." The voice on the other end was formal, careful. "A complaint has been filed, alleging that you improperly used your judicial position to initiate an ethics review against Mayor Abraham's campaign following a personal dispute at a private event." "That's not what happened," Athena said, keeping her voice level despite the fire building in her chest. "I reported information I had reason to believe was true. That's not retaliation. That's my duty." "We understand, Judge Walsh. This call is simply to inform you that the complaint has been received and a preliminary review will begin. We wanted you to hear it from us first." She thanked them, hung up, and sat very still, staring at the phone like it might ring again and take back everything it had just told her. A sharp knock hit her door before it swung open. Bianca Olsen stepped inside without waiting for an answer, phone already in her hand, face pale. "Please tell me you've seen this," Bianca said. "I've seen it. I just got the call, too." Athena's voice came out flatter than she intended. "There's a formal bar complaint. They're opening a preliminary review. This is exactly what I was afraid of." Bianca dropped into the chair across from Athena's desk, exhaling hard. "This is textbook. You embarrass a powerful man, and instead of apologizing, he turns around and makes himself the victim. It's disgusting, and it works every single time." Because people believe headlines before they believe the truth. They're framing it like I abused my office. Athena pressed her fingers to her temple. Like reporting something I had good reason to believe was true is the same as retaliation. I know how it looks, Athena. I know how it's supposed to look. Bianca leaned forward, her voice dropping, urgent. This isn't about truth. This is about optics. Hallwell didn't write this article to convince people you're guilty. He wrote it to make people wonder. That's all he needs. A little bit of doubt, and suddenly the story isn't about a mayor who laughed while his daughter humiliated a judge. It's about whether that judge can be trusted. Athena looked down at the formal complaint notice now sitting in her inbox, the words swimming slightly as she reread the accusation against her name, her career, everything she had built since she was a little girl, watching her mother scrub other people's floors and promising herself things would be different. They wanted to make this about her. They wanted to turn her composure into a weapon against her youth into a liability, her one phone call into proof of some hidden agenda. She set her jaw, closed the laptop, and looked up at Bianca with something hard and steady settling behind her eyes. Then we fight this the right way, Athena said. Slow, careful, and smarter than they think I am. 3 days had passed since the bar complaint landed on Athena Walsh's desk. 3 days of phone calls with her attorney. 3 days of watching the story mutate online into something she barely recognized. Now she sat in a closed hearing room before the Judicial Oversight Panel, her hands folded in her lap, her spine straight despite the exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. 5 panel members sat behind a long table, folders open in front of them. She recognized 2 of them from prior conferences, faces she'd shaken hands with at Bar Association dinners. Neither of them met her eyes now. The chairperson, an older man with silver glasses and a careful, practiced voice, cleared his throat. Judge Walsh, thank you for coming in on short notice. As you know, a formal complaint has been filed regarding the events surrounding the gala and the subsequent ethics review into Mayor Abraham's campaign finances. I'm aware, Athena said. Given the seriousness of the allegations, and given the significant media attention this matter has attracted, the panel has decided that, pending the outcome of the investigation, you will be voluntarily removed from your active docket. He said it gently, like the softness of his tone might cushion the blow. This is not a finding of wrongdoing. It's a precaution. Standard procedure in matters of this visibility. Athena kept her face still, though something inside her cracked quietly, like ice under weight. How long? Until the investigation concludes. We can't give you an exact timeline. She nodded once. There was nothing to argue. Fighting the suspension publicly would only hand Hallwell more ammunition, more proof that she couldn't accept consequences, more fuel for the narrative that she was reckless, emotional, unfit. So she sat there and absorbed it, the way she'd absorbed so many things in her life, quietly, without giving anyone the satisfaction of watching her break. Thank you for informing me directly, she said, and stood, gathering her coat with hands that did not shake. That evening, at home, she made the mistake of turning on the television. Edgar Walsh sat beside her on the couch, a bowl of untouched popcorn between them, as a panel of commentators debated her case like it was a football game. One woman with sharp red lipstick leaned into the camera, voice dripping with false concern. I think what's troubling here, the woman said, is the pattern. This is a judge who rose extremely fast through the ranks, and now we're seeing questions raised about her judgment, her temperament. I'm not saying there's a connection, but I think people are right to ask whether someone that young was ready for that kind of power. The man beside her nodded along. It's a fair question. You look at her rulings over the past year, and some of them do raise eyebrows once you dig into them. They cut to a clip of one of her old cases, A sentencing decision from 8 months ago, twisted through selective editing to sound harsher and more arbitrary than it had been in context. Athena watched her own face on the screen, calm and composed, as she delivered that ruling, while the commentary beneath it painted her as impulsive. "This is insane," Edgar said, setting down the remote hard enough to rattle the coffee table. "They're pulling cases from months ago that have nothing to do with any of this." "That's the point," Athena said quietly. "It's not about the cases. It's about making people doubt me. Enough doubt, and it doesn't matter what's true." Edgar turned to look at her, his jaw tight, his eyes full of a frustration he clearly didn't know where to put. "You worked your whole life for this. You didn't get here by luck. You got here because you're better at this job than almost anyone I've ever met." "I know that." Her voice cracked, just slightly, the first real crack she'd allowed all day. "But it doesn't feel like it's mattering right now. It feels like everything I built is being unraveled by people who never wanted me in this seat to begin with. Like they've been waiting for a reason, and I just handed them one." Edgar reached over and took the remote from where he'd dropped it and clicked the television off, plunging the room into sudden, merciful silence. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her against him. "You didn't hand them anything. You told the truth. That's not a crime, no matter how hard they try to make it look like one." Athena sat there in the quiet, wine long gone from her skin, but the sting of the night still somehow fresh, and let herself, for just a moment, lean into him and stop pretending she was fine. The federal courthouse hallway echoed with the sound of Athena Walsh's heels against polished stone, quieter now that her office no longer buzzed with the business of active cases. She'd come in that morning out of habit more than purpose, unsure what else to do with herself while her docket sat empty, and her name sat under review. Bianca Olson caught up to her near the elevators, moving fast, her expression tight, in a way that made Athena's stomach drop before a single word left her mouth. "Walk with me," Bianca said, low, glancing over her shoulder. They ducked into an empty conference room. Bianca shut the door behind them and leaned against it for a second, like she needed the extra weight to keep it closed. "I got pulled into Judge Harrington's office this morning," Bianca said, "along with 2 other judges. We got the talk." "What talk?" "The talk where nobody says your name directly, but everybody means you." Bianca crossed her arms, anger simmering just beneath her calm. "They said, and I'm quoting here, that given the sensitivity of the current situation, it would be wise for judges on this bench to avoid any public statements of support for colleagues under active review. For optics." Athena let out a short, humorless laugh. "Optics? I told them optics can go to hell." Bianca's jaw was tight. "But I'm not going to pretend it doesn't put me in a position. If I'm seen helping you too visibly, it gives Hallwell something new to point at. 2 judges, colluding, protecting their own. You know how that story writes itself. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm going to help you anyway, just quietly." Bianca's eyes softened. "You didn't get here by yourself, and you're not going to get through this by yourself either. I just have to be smart about how I do it." Athena nodded, throat tight with something she didn't have words for yet. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number. She answered, cautious. "This is Judge Walsh." "Judge Walsh, my name is Detective Oliver Page. I got your number from a mutual contact. I know this is unusual, but I need 10 minutes of your time. Somewhere private." "What is this regarding, Detective?" "Mayor Abraham," Page said, and something in his voice made her go still. "And a year of work I think might connect to what's happening to you right now." They met an hour later in a quiet corner of the courthouse parking garage, concrete pillars casting long shadows between them, the air smelling faintly of exhaust and rain. Page was a stocky man in his 40s, tired eyes, a battered leather folder tucked under one arm like it held something fragile. "I've been building a case against Abraham for over a year," he said without preamble. "Donations funneled through a shell company tied to his campaign. Same shell company the ethics review is looking at now. Every time I get close to real evidence, something happens. Witnesses go quiet. Paperwork gets lost. City Hall stonewalls every request I file. You think Hallwell is behind that. I know he is. I just can't prove it yet." Page handed her the folder, his hand steady despite the weight of what he was admitting. "I think your ethics complaint and my stalled investigation are connected. Somebody's protecting Abraham on multiple fronts, and I think it's the same somebody." Athena took the folder carefully, aware of exactly how dangerous this exchange was, how easily it could be twisted into more proof of collusion, more fuel for the narrative already burning against her. "Detective, I need to be clear. I'm currently suspended pending review. Anything I do with this has to be handled very carefully. I understand that. I'm not asking you to do anything reckless. I'm asking you to look at what I found and tell me if I'm crazy, or if there's really something here worth fighting for." His eyes held hers steady, pleading in a way that felt honest. "I've been stonewalled for a year, Judge Walsh. I'm running out of places to turn." She glanced down at the folder in her hands, thin but heavy with everything it might mean. "I'll look at it," she said, carefully and quietly. Page nodded, relief flickering across his tired face. "Thank you." He turned and walked toward the garage exit, footsteps echoing off concrete, leaving Athena standing alone with a folder that could either save her or bury her deeper, depending on who found out she had it. 2 days after her parking garage meeting with Detective Page, Athena Walsh sat in her chambers across from her attorney, Camille Campbell, a woman with sharp eyes and a habit of tapping her pen against legal pads when she was about to say something Athena wouldn't like. "I finally got the full complaint file," Camille said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I think you should see who filed it." Athena opened the folder, scanning the header, expecting to see Paris Abraham's name, or maybe Mayor Abraham's own signature backing his daughter. Instead, her eyes landed on a name that made her sit back slowly in her chair. Complainant, Councilwoman Rebecca Valens. "That can't be right," Athena said. "It's right. Signed and notarized 3 days after the gala." Camille tapped her pen twice against the desk. "I know you two have worked together. Judicial Reform Committee, wasn't it? 2 years. She testified in support of my confirmation." Athena's voice came out quieter than she meant it to, the shock settling into something heavier, something that felt uncomfortably close to hurt. "She's not close with Abraham. Not that I've ever seen." "Well, she's the one who filed this. Word for word, some of the language matches what ran in that Friendly Outlets article almost too closely." Camille's eyes narrowed. "Which makes me wonder if she wrote this herself, or if someone handed it to her." Athena didn't wait for a theory to form fully before she was reaching for her coat. She found Rebecca Valens in her council office an hour later, a modest space cluttered with community award plaques and photographs of ribbon cuttings. Rebecca looked up from her desk when Athena stepped through the doorway, and something flickered across her face immediately, something fast and guilty, gone almost before Athena could name it. "Athena." Rebecca stood, smoothing her blazer, her voice a half-step too bright. "This is a surprise. I think you know why I'm here." Athena shut the door behind her, keeping her voice level despite the tightness in her chest. "You filed the ethics complaint against me." Rebecca's hands, resting on the edge of her desk, curled slightly. "I had concerns about how quickly the review into Abraham's donations was triggered after your dispute with his daughter. I thought it warranted a look." "A look?" Athena stepped closer. "Rebecca, I've known you for 2 years. You testified for my confirmation. You told a room full of senators I had the integrity to sit on that bench. And now you're the one accusing me of abusing it? I have to follow my conscience, Rebecca said, but her voice wavered on the last word, thin and unconvincing. Then look me in the eye and tell me this was your idea. Athena's voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath it now. Tell me nobody put this in front of you and told you to sign it. Rebecca's eyes dropped to her desk. Her hands, still resting there, had begun to tremble, small and involuntary. The kind of shaking a person can't fully hide no matter how hard they try. I can't discuss the specifics of my decision. I'm sorry, Athena. I have to ask you to leave. Rebecca. Athena softened her voice, just slightly, searching for the woman she thought she knew underneath whatever fear had settled over her. Whatever's going on, whatever's making you do this, you don't have to carry it alone. Please! Rebecca's voice cracked, barely a whisper now. Just go. Athena studied her for a long moment, watching the way Rebecca refused to meet her eyes, the way her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. This wasn't the confident, outspoken councilwoman Athena remembered from committee meetings. This was someone scared. Okay, Athena said quietly. I'll go. She turned and walked out, closing the door gently behind her instead of slamming it the way some part of her wanted to. In the hallway, she paused, glancing back through the narrow window in the door. Rebecca sat frozen at her desk, staring down at her phone, which had just lit up with a new message. Even from a distance, Athena could see the dread written plainly across the councilwoman's face, the way her hand hovered over the screen like she was afraid to read whatever waited there. Something was wrong, something bigger than a simple disagreement about ethics or optics. Athena walked back toward her car, already turning it over in her mind. Rebecca hadn't filed that complaint because she believed it. She'd filed it because someone had made her, and Athena intended to find out exactly who. A full week passed after Athena Walsh's tense conversation with Rebecca Valens, a week of quiet waiting that felt heavier than any of the loud chaos before it. She spent the days going through Detective Page's folder line by line, cross-referencing dates, building a mental map of connections she couldn't yet prove. Then, on a gray Thursday morning, her attorney called with news that changed everything. Felicity Nolan wants to talk, Camille Campbell said. She's been sitting on the full, unedited footage from the gala. Says she's ready to go public. Athena felt something tighten in her chest. Hope mixed with fear of what hope might cost her. Why now? She said she couldn't sleep anymore watching what was happening to you. Said it felt wrong to stay quiet while a doctored story ran wild, and the truth just sat on her phone. By that afternoon, Felicity stood behind a podium at a small press conference organized with Camille's help, her hands steady despite the flashing cameras in front of her. Athena watched from the back of the room, Edgar Walsh beside her, both of them holding their breath. I recorded the entire incident at the gala, Felicity said, her voice clear and unwavering. Not a clip, not an edited version. Everything, start to finish. She held up her phone. I'm releasing the full unedited video today, along with the original file metadata, so nobody can claim it's been altered or taken out of context. The footage played on a screen beside her. There was Paris Abraham, sneering, calling Athena a quota pick, pouring the wine with clear, deliberate intention. There was Mayor Abraham, laughing loud and delighted, no hesitation, no shock, nothing that resembled the calm, statesman-like concern his spokesperson had described in that friendly article. The footage left no room for interpretation, no misunderstanding, just cruelty, caught on camera, undeniable. Within hours, legal analysts on every channel were saying the same thing. The footage gutted the narrative Hallwell had built. There was no version of events where Athena had retaliated over a misunderstanding, because there had been no misunderstanding at all. That evening, Detective Page called with news of his own. The DA's office reached out, he said, voice buzzing with cautious excitement. They're willing to formally review the shell company evidence. Your footage going public reopened doors that had been slammed shut on me for a year. Athena hung up the phone and stood in her kitchen for a moment, feeling something loosen in her chest for the first time in weeks. That night, she and Edgar invited Bianca Olson over for dinner, a small, quiet celebration that felt earned after everything. Bianca arrived with a bottle of wine, then paused in the doorway, looking at it like she'd just remembered something. I probably shouldn't have brought this, she said, holding the bottle up with a rueful grin. It's fine, Athena said, laughing for what felt like the first time in weeks. I think I can handle being in the same room as wine again. They sat around the kitchen table, plates of pasta between them, the warm hum of normal conversation filling the space that had been so heavy for so long. Bianca told stories about her early years on the bench, how many people had doubted her too, how she'd learned to let her rulings speak louder than anyone's whispers. You should have seen their faces today, Bianca said, shaking her head. The same commentators who were tearing you apart last week are scrambling to walk it all back. Funny how fast people change their tune once the truth shows up uninvited. Edgar refilled everyone's glasses, careful with the wine this time, and raised his own toward the center of the table. To Felicity, for having the guts to do the right thing. To Felicity, Athena echoed, lifting her glass. Bianca raised hers as well, a small, satisfied smile spreading across her face. To justice finally catching up, she said. Athena clinked her glass against theirs and let herself smile fully, openly. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for weeks finally easing. The bar complaint against her looked likely to collapse under the weight of the footage. Page's case had new life. For the first time since that ballroom, since that laugh, she allowed herself to believe the worst might actually be behind her. She didn't know yet how quickly that hope would be tested. 4 days after the dinner with Bianca, 4 days of cautious optimism that had almost started to feel normal again, Athena Walsh's phone rang while she stood in her kitchen pouring coffee. Camille Campbell's name flashed on the screen, and something in the timing, too early, too urgent, made Athena's stomach drop before she even answered. "Tell me this is good news," Athena said. "It's not." Camille's voice was tight, clipped in a way Athena had never heard from her before. "The footage has been suppressed. A judge granted an emergency order this morning. On what grounds? Chain of custody. Someone challenged whether Felicity's phone was ever properly secured after the incident, whether the file could have been altered before it was handed over to your legal team." Camille exhaled hard. "And there's more. A sworn affidavit surfaced an hour ago, claiming Felicity was paid by your legal team to fabricate the footage's narrative." Athena set her coffee mug down slowly, her hand suddenly unsteady. "That's a lie. A complete lie. I know that. You know that. But right now, on paper, it's a sworn statement, and it's enough to make the Judicial Oversight Panel nervous." Camille paused. "Athena, I have to tell you. They're moving to formally suspend you pending a full disciplinary hearing. Not voluntary this time. Formal." The words landed like a physical blow. Athena gripped the edge of the counter, steadying herself against a wave of dizziness that had nothing to do with the coffee she hadn't finished. "Who challenged the chain of custody?" "We don't know for certain, but the clerk who processed the emergency filing has ties to Gideon Hallwell's office. That's not a coincidence, Athena. That's a coordinated move." She barely had time to process that before her phone buzzed again. Detective Page. Judge Walsh. His voice sounded hollow, defeated in a way that scared her more than his words. "My witness recanted. Everything he told me about the shell company, the laundered donations, all of it. He said he made a mistake, that he must have misunderstood the paperwork. Oliver. Why? He got a call last night. Anonymous. I don't have proof of what was said, but I know fear when I hear it in someone's voice. And he was terrified when he called me back this morning. Paige's voice cracked with frustration. A year of work. Gone in one phone call. Athena hung up, sank into a kitchen chair, and stared at the wall, her mind spinning through everything that had just collapsed around her in the span of a single morning. That evening, she sat with Edgar at the kitchen table, the television on low in the background, neither of them able to eat much of the dinner between them. Then the news cut to a live broadcast, and Athena's whole body went rigid. Mayor Marcel Abraham stood at a podium outside City Hall, cameras flashing, a wide, satisfied smile stretched across his face. Today, Abraham said, voice booming with confidence, the truth has finally caught up to a reckless smear campaign against my family and my administration. The so-called evidence against me has collapsed under scrutiny, exactly as I always said it would. He paused, letting the moment breathe, clearly enjoying every second of it. I want to say something directly to Judge Walsh, he continued, his tone shifting into something colder, sharper. Some people rise too fast, and they forget the fall is faster. A ripple of laughter moved through the small crowd gathered behind him. Which is why today, I'm proud to announce I'll be seeking a seat in the United States Senate. Applause broke out. Camera flashes lit up his triumphant grin. Athena sat frozen at her kitchen table, watching the man who had laughed while wine dripped down her face, now standing taller than ever. Untouched, unstoppable. Exactly the opposite of what she'd fought for over the past month. Edgar reached across the table and gripped her hand tightly, silent, his jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. There was nothing to say. Her career hung in the balance of a formal disciplinary hearing built on lies. Paige's case was in ashes, and the man responsible for all of it had just announced his run for one of the highest offices in the country, smiling the entire time. Athena stared at the screen until it finally cut to commercial. Her reflection ghosted faintly in the dark glass, wine-stained memory and present humiliation blurring together into one long, aching wound. The television screen had gone dark for several minutes before Edgar Walsh finally reached for the remote and turned it off completely. The kitchen fell into silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing outside. Athena Walsh sat perfectly still, her hand still resting under Edgar's, her eyes fixed on nothing. Say something, Edgar said gently. I don't know what to say. Her voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. I keep thinking about all of it. Law school, the circuit court. Every extra hour I put in trying to prove I belonged there. And now, it feels like none of that matters. Like one man with a microphone and a smile can just erase it. It doesn't erase it. Edgar's voice was firm, steady in a way that cut through the fog settling over her. Nothing he says on a podium changes what you actually did. You didn't get that seat by luck. You got there by outworking every single person who doubted you, every teacher who assumed you'd struggle, every colleague who whispered about you being too young. You've been proving people wrong your whole life, Athena. This is just one more time. She looked up at him, something in his words cutting through the exhaustion weighing her down. It doesn't feel like one more time. It feels like the end. It's not the end. It's a setback. Edgar squeezed her hand. You taught me that yourself, remember? Years ago, when I was still doubting whether I'd ever make captain. You told me the system moves slow, but it moves if you feed it the right things at the right time. You didn't stop feeding it then. Don't stop now. Something shifted in her chest, small but real, like a single ember catching after being smothered under ash. She sat up a little straighter. I need to call Bianca, Athena said. It's almost 10. She won't care. Bianca Olsen picked up on the second ring, her voice sharp with worry. I saw the broadcast. I've been staring at my phone for an hour trying to figure out what to say to you. I need your help, Athena said. Off the record. I know what they told you and the other judges about staying away from this, and I understand if you can't. Stop right there. Bianca's voice hardened with resolve. I don't care what Harrington said about optics. You think I'm going to sit here and watch that man dance around a podium while you get buried under lies built by his fixer? Tell me what you need. Athena exhaled, relief loosening something tight in her shoulders. The suppression order on Felicity's footage. I want to understand exactly how it happened. And I want to know if there's any way to prove it was engineered instead of earned. I can pull the filing details tomorrow morning. I know the clerk's office better than most people in that building. Bianca paused. Athena, if Hallwell's people got to that clerk, there's going to be a trail. People like that always leave a trail. They're arrogant. They think nobody's smart enough to look. Then let's be smart enough to look. Come to my place tomorrow morning. Early. Bring coffee, because this is going to be a long day of reading legal filings, and I plan to make you suffer through every page of it with me. Athena almost laughed, the sound surprising her, rusty from disuse. Thank you, Bianca. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we take that man down. Bianca's voice softened, just slightly. Get some sleep tonight. You're going to need it. The call ended, and Athena set her phone down on the table, staring at it for a long moment before looking up at Edgar, who was watching her with something like relief written across his face. You've got that look again, he said. What look? The one you get right before you walk into a courtroom and win. He smiled, tired but genuine, and stood, pulling her up gently from her chair. Come on, Bianca's right. You need sleep. For the first time in days, Athena climbed into bed without her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios, without replaying Abraham's laugh or Paris's sneer or the sight of her own suspension notice glowing on a screen. She set her alarm for 5:30 and closed her eyes, and sleep came easier than it had in weeks. Before drifting off, she murmured into the dark, quiet but certain, more to herself than to Edgar beside her. This isn't over. Not even close. Bianca Olsen's home office looked like a small war room by 7 the next morning. Papers covered the desk, 2 laptops glowed side by side, and a pot of coffee sat half-empty between them. Athena Walsh had arrived 20 minutes early, unable to sleep past 5 anyway, and now sat hunched over a printed copy of the emergency suppression filing, a red pen in hand. Here! Bianca tapped her screen, spinning it around so Athena could see. This is the metadata report from Felicity's original phone upload. Timestamp, location data, file integrity hash. All of it. Athena leaned in, scanning the numbers carefully. It's clean. It's completely clean. Bianca's voice held a note of triumph. The file was never altered. Not once, not for a second, from the moment Felicity recorded it to the moment she handed it over to your legal team. Whoever challenged the chain of custody wasn't pointing at real tampering. They were pointing at a procedural delay, a gap of maybe 6 hours before the file got formally logged, and they twisted that gap into a 5-alarm crisis. 6 hours isn't tampering. 6 hours is a woman deciding whether to risk her job by coming forward. Exactly. And I'd bet everything I own that the clerk who filed the emergency order knew that gap meant nothing and used it anyway because he was told to. Bianca pulled up another document. I checked his filing history. He's approved maybe a dozen emergency suppression orders in the last 3 years. This is the fastest one on record. Usually it takes days of review. This one moved in under 4 hours. Someone pushed it through. Someone with a lot of influence. Bianca's eyes met hers. This isn't proof yet, but it's a thread. and threads unravel. Athena's phone buzzed on the desk beside her. Camille Campbell's name flashed on the screen, along with a message that made her sit up straighter. Rebecca Valens wants to meet. Says it's urgent. Says it's about the complaint. 2 hours later, Athena sat across from Rebecca Valens in Camille's office, a room chosen deliberately for its privacy. Blinds drawn, phones set face down on the table. Rebecca looked different than she had in her council office days earlier, her shoulders less rigid, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. "I need to tell you the truth," Rebecca said, voice trembling slightly. "About the complaint. About all of it." "I'm listening," Athena said gently. Rebecca's hands twisted together in her lap. "Gideon Hallwell came to my office 2 weeks before the gala. He knew things about my late husband, business dealings from years ago, a zoning favor he took that I didn't know about until Hallwell laid it all out in front of me like a case file." Her voice cracked. "He said, if I didn't file that complaint against you after the gala, he'd leak everything to the press. My husband's been gone 3 years, Athena. I couldn't let his name get dragged through that. I couldn't let my kids see it. So you signed a lie to protect his memory." "Yes." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "And I've regretted it every single day since. Watching what it's done to you, watching you get suspended over something I know isn't true, it's been eating me alive." Camille leaned forward. "Rebecca, if you're willing to put this on the record, formally, it changes everything. It proves the complaint wasn't filed in good faith. It ties Hallwell directly to coercion and witness tampering. What happens to me if I do this?" "We can request protective measures," Camille said. "Given the blackmail, given the threats, there are legal protections available to you as a coerced witness." Athena reached across the table, resting her hand gently over Rebecca's trembling fingers. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore. I know what it's like to feel cornered by someone with more power than you. I'm not going to let you go through the fallout of doing the right thing by yourself." Rebecca looked up at her, something breaking loose behind her eyes, relief and grief tangled together. "I should have trusted you from the start. I should have come to you the moment he threatened me instead of doing what he wanted." "You're doing it now," Athena said. "That's what matters." Camille slid a blank statement form across the table, along with a pen. Rebecca stared at it for a long moment, took a slow breath, and began to write, her handwriting steadying with each line as the truth finally left her in ink instead of silence. When she finished, she set the pen down and pushed the signed statement across the table toward Athena. "I should have trusted you from the start," Rebecca said again, quieter this time, like she needed to say it twice to believe it herself. 2 days after Rebecca Valens signed her statement, Athena Walsh sat on her porch in the early evening, a mug of tea cooling untouched beside her when Detective Oliver Page's car pulled into the driveway. She stood as he climbed out, his usual tired expression replaced by something she hadn't seen on his face before. Something close to hope. "You've got news," she said. "I've got news." Page climbed the porch steps, 2 at a time, a thick folder tucked under his arm, his voice quick with barely contained excitement. "After you flagged the intimidation call to the marshals last week, they took it seriously. Real seriously. They moved my witness into protective custody within 48 hours. And he called me yesterday. Wanted to talk." Page sat down in the chair across from her, setting the folder on the small table between them. "He said once he knew his family was safe, once the fear wasn't sitting on his chest every second, everything changed." He recanted his recantation, gave a full statement on record, with documentation this time. Bank transfers, shell company filings, emails between Abraham and 2 of his top donors discussing how to route the money so it wouldn't show up on public disclosure forms. Athena's breath caught. He can prove Abraham directed it personally. Signed documentation with Abraham's own initials on the transfer approvals. He got sloppy, Judge Walsh. Powerful men usually do, eventually. They start believing nobody will ever look close enough to catch them. Page opened the folder, sliding a few pages across the table. Combined with Rebecca Valens's statement about the blackmail, combined with the clean metadata from Felicity's footage proving the suppression order was built on nothing, the DA's office called me an hour ago. And said what? Said they have enough now. Enough to move forward with formal charges against both Abraham and Hallwell. Campaign finance fraud, witness intimidation, obstruction. Page shook his head, something like disbelief mixed with satisfaction crossing his face. A year of getting stonewalled, and it turns out all it took was people finally being brave enough to talk once they weren't scared anymore. Athena sat back in her chair, letting the weight of it settle over her slowly, carefully, like she was afraid moving too fast might make it disappear. What happens now? There's going to be a public counsel hearing next week. Formal reinstatement of the footage as evidence, Rebecca's testimony read into the record, the DA's charges announced publicly. Page closed the folder gently. It's going to be big. Bigger than the gala, probably. This time it won't be a rumor or a leaked article. It'll be on the record, in front of cameras, undeniable. And the disciplinary hearing against me? My understanding is Camille's already filed a motion to dismiss based on the new evidence proving the original complaint was coerced. I think you're going to be fine, Judge Walsh. Better than fine. Athena looked out over her front yard, the evening light fading soft and orange behind the houses across the street, and felt something in her chest finally loosen after weeks of holding it tight, holding it together through sheer will. A year of your life went into this, she said quietly. I know what that cost you. The stonewalling, the dead ends, watching your witness recant. I know how close you came to just letting it go. I almost did, more than once. Page's voice softened. But then I watched you take a wine glass to the face and make one phone call instead of screaming at a room full of donors. Made me think maybe I owed it to keep pushing a little longer, too. Athena smiled, the first easy, unguarded smile she'd allowed herself in what felt like a long time. Well, I'm glad you did. Page stood, extending his hand. Athena rose and took it, their handshake firm, steady. Two people who'd both spent months fighting an uphill battle finally standing on solid ground. Next week, it all goes on the record, Page said. Abraham's not going to know what hit him. Let's make sure of that, Athena said. Page nodded, gathered his folder, and walked back toward his car, leaving Athena alone on the porch as the last light faded from the sky. She sat back down, picked up her cold tea, and for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like when this was finally, truly over. 1 week later, the city council chamber overflowed with people. Reporters packed the back rows, cameras mounted on tripods along the side walls, donors and citizens filling every available seat. Athena Walsh sat in the gallery beside Edgar Walsh and Bianca Olson, her hands folded tightly in her lap, watching the room fill with the same nervous energy that had once filled the Meridian Hotel ballroom. At the front, Mayor Marcel Abraham sat rigid in a reserved seat near the council members, his usual easy confidence replaced by something tighter, more guarded. Paris Abraham sat beside him, scrolling her phone, seemingly unaware of what was about to unfold around her. The council chairperson called the session to order. Today's proceedings concern formal evidence review related to the ethics complaint against Judge Athena Walsh, alongside separate findings from an ongoing criminal investigation into campaign finance irregularities within Mayor Abraham's administration. A hush fell over the room as the chairperson nodded toward the technician at the back. The screen above the council dais flickered to life, and Felicity Nolan's unedited footage began to play. Formally reinstated as evidence after the metadata report proved the suppression order had no legitimate grounds. The room watched, many for the first time in full, unedited detail. Paris's cruel words, the wine. Abraham's laugh, loud and unmistakable, cutting through the silence of the chamber, just as it had cut through the ballroom weeks earlier. Paris's face went pale. Abraham's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening against the armrest of his chair. Camille Campbell stood next, reading Rebecca Valens's signed statement into the official record, her voice steady and clear as she detailed the blackmail, the threats against Rebecca's late husband's memory, the coercion that led to a false ethics complaint against a judge who had done nothing but tell the truth. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. Then came the moment Athena had been waiting weeks to witness. A representative from the district attorney's office stepped forward, formal and unhurried, and announced that federal and local prosecutors were filing charges against Mayor Marcel Abraham and his chief of staff, Gideon Hallwell, for campaign finance fraud, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. The chamber erupted into stunned murmurs. Camera flashes fired in rapid succession, capturing Abraham's face as it drained of color, his mouth opening slightly like he wanted to argue but had nothing left to argue with. "This is outrageous," Abraham said, half rising from his seat, his voice cracking with the first genuine panic Athena had ever heard from him. "This is a coordinated attack, Sit down, Mr. Abraham," the chairperson said firmly, "or you will be removed from this chamber." He sat, jaw tight, eyes darting toward the exits, like a man searching for an escape that didn't exist. Security officers moved toward Paris next, and the confusion on her face turned to horror as an officer explained she was being formally charged, both for the original assault at the gala and for a separate charge tied to her father's team's interference with witness Felicity Nolan during the suppression scheme. "Wait!" Paris's voice rose, sharp and panicked, so different from the sneering confidence she'd worn weeks earlier. "This is insane!" "It was wine. It was just wine." "Ma'am, please stand," the officer said, unmoved by her protest. Paris stood, stumbling slightly, her eyes wide with disbelief as the officer guided her toward the chamber doors. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions, phones raised exactly the way they'd been raised the night she'd humiliated Athena in front of 200 donors. Now those same phones captured her being escorted out in front of the entire city, her father frozen in his seat, unable to help her, unable to help himself. Athena watched it all from the gallery, feeling something settle deep in her chest. Not quite joy. Something steadier than that. Something closer to peace. Edgar reached over and squeezed her hand. Bianca leaned close, whispering, "It's really happening. It's really happening," Athena echoed. The chamber doors swung shut behind Paris, muffling the shouted questions from the hallway beyond. Abraham remained frozen in his seat at the front of the room. The man who had laughed while wine dripped down a judge's face, now sitting silent and small beneath the weight of cameras that no longer flattered him. The gallery buzzed with stunned energy, murmurs rising into something like a wave. The same room that had once been ready to believe the worst about Athena, now witnessing the truth reassert itself, undeniable and unstoppable, exactly the way she'd trusted it would, if she gave it enough time and enough patience to find its way to the surface. The following week brought a kind of quiet Athena Walsh hadn't felt in over a month. She sat behind her desk in her federal chambers, morning light spilling across stacks of paperwork that had finally started to feel normal again, and opened a thick envelope bearing the seal of the Bar Association. She read it twice before letting herself believe it. The letter formally lifted her suspension, effective immediately. It stated, in careful official language, that the original complaint had been found to be the product of coercion and blackmail, and that the Judicial Oversight Panel extended its sincere apology for the undue scrutiny she'd faced. One line near the bottom made her breath catch. The panel acknowledged that assumptions about her age and background had unfairly colored the speed and severity of the process against her, a rare admission that landed heavier than she expected. Below that, a second letter invited her to chair a newly formed Judicial Integrity Task Force, designed to review exactly the kind of coercion and political pressure that had nearly ended her career. Not a consolation prize, a recognition that everything she'd built, she'd earned. The news outside her chambers had moved fast in the days since the council hearing. Mayor Marcel Abraham's Senate campaign collapsed within 48 hours, donors pulling support one after another, his own party distancing itself in carefully worded statements. Rather than face formal removal proceedings, he resigned as mayor, released a brief statement claiming he wanted to focus on clearing his name, and now faced federal indictment on charges of campaign finance fraud and obstruction. Gideon Hallwell had been arrested 2 days after the hearing. His ruthless efficiency finally caught up with a warrant and a pair of handcuffs. Paris Abraham, once so certain nothing would ever touch her, now faced formal charges of her own, her name permanently attached to consequences instead of impunity. A knock sounded at Athena's door. She looked up to see Felicity Nolan standing in the doorway, a small envelope in her hand and a hesitant smile on her face. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by," Felicity said. "Of course." Athena waved her in, standing to meet her halfway across the room. "Come in." Felicity held out the envelope. "I wanted to give you this myself." Athena opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten card, simple and heartfelt, thanking her for never once asking Felicity to lie or exaggerate, for trusting the truth to be enough even when everything around them suggested it wouldn't be. "You didn't have to do this," Athena said, throat tightening. "I wanted to." Felicity's eyes were bright. "You stood there that night, wine running down your face, and you didn't scream, you didn't lash out. You just made one phone call and trusted the truth to catch up eventually. Watching that, it gave me the courage to do the same thing when it mattered." "You're the one who had the courage," Athena said. "I just made a phone call. You put your name on the line publicly. That took something I'm not sure I could have done in your position." Felicity smiled, wiping quickly at her eyes. "I should let you get back to work. I just wanted to say thank you properly, before things got too busy for both of us." They embraced briefly, and Felicity slipped out of the office, leaving Athena alone with the card in her hands and a chambers full of morning light. She walked to her desk and set the card gently beside her nameplate, the two objects sitting together like bookends to everything that had happened since that gala. Her nameplate, earned through years of relentless work. The card, proof that doing the right thing, even when it was hard, even when it cost something, still mattered in the end. That evening, Edgar Walsh picked her up outside the courthouse, and they drove home together in comfortable silence, windows cracked, warm summer air moving through the car. He reached over and took her hand at a red light, giving it a gentle squeeze. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Being back." Athena looked out the window at the city passing by, the same city that had once watched her humiliated in a ballroom, the same city that had now watched the truth win out in a council chamber under bright lights and rolling cameras. "It feels like it was always supposed to end this way," she said. Back in her chambers, the evening sun caught the edge of Felicity's card one last time before the office lights clicked off for the night. Athena Walsh stood at her window, looking out over the city she'd fought so hard to serve, and allowed herself, finally, completely, a full and unguarded smile. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.